Hi, I'm your host, Kevin Myers. Welcome back to the 24/7 News Show. A lot has happened since we were last on, from Trump doctoring a weather map by drawing on it with a Sharpie, possibly committing a federal crime in the process, to releasing classified drone footage to the public. But today we're going to be talking about the iPhone 11. And to do this, because I'm being paid by Microsoft, I got my Microsoft Surface Pro here. So you guys, you can't trust me. I brought in tech analyst Parth Gandhi from Tidal Wave Productions. I brought him in last year. We talked about the iPhone XS, which was very boring, much like this phone, if we're real here. But let's get into it. So first is the cameras. So Parth, what do you think about the new camera setup?
So just to recap, on the iPhone 11 we have the dual cameras, and on the iPhone 11 Pro we have the triple cameras that kind of look like a fidget spinner. So that's kind of the difference that you're getting between those ones. On the dual cameras on the iPhone 11, you're getting a regular just a camera, and then a wide angle camera which can zoom out 2 times, but on the iPhone 11 Pro you're actually getting that telephoto lens that can zoom in 2 times. So those are the differences in terms of cameras, but obviously that is the biggest feature, which kind of tells you something.
Yeah. And what about the new night mode? Is that really that big of a deal?
Well, obviously it's a welcome addition, a great addition in terms of, because that was one of the main things that, for example, the Pixel 3 had over the iPhone camera, is that it had a very, very good night mode. So it's a very good feature to have, but I wouldn't market it as a huge feature. It's mostly software. So, and they showed it on stage. It looks like it does amazing things, but I don't know how different Apple is going to be when you're actually talking about what actually happened. So that was their very hand-picked kind of select group that they used to take those pictures and use them.
It's all cherry-picked, and like you see the memes, which are just so depressingly accurate, when they have, basically they'll attach like a cinema lens onto the front of an iPhone with this crazy rig, and then say shot on iPhone. It's like, because everyone attaches a $500,000 lens to their iPhone just to shoot a 5-second video of their kids running around in the backyard. So that is totally an accurate representation of what we're going to be getting. But I guess it is good to see them finally taking a step forward, even if they are the last ones to do it. Which partially is just because of their timing, because Samsung, they get to set the tone for the year with the launching their devices at the very beginning in like February, whereas Apple's kind of playing catch up, being in September. Do you think that in a way plays into how Apple sometimes gets this perception of being far behind, or do you think it's actually because they choose to be far behind?
Well, in terms of what I've heard and what basically I've seen, Apple, obviously, yes, they are behind in lots of technologies, but I guess you could call it that they're fashionably late to the party, as in the fact that, yes, they may be late to adding some new features, but usually after they do add these features, they are, I don't want to sound like Apple fanboy.
Many times.
Yes, they are the best implemented most times, and it's really, that's what sets the standard for in the future using those new features. Like, for example, Apple was late with the all-screen design that they introduced just 2 years ago. 3 years ago? 2 years ago.
It was 2017.
So yeah, they introduced it just 2 years ago when competitors have had that for a very, very long time. But in terms of that, I wouldn't say they did it the best, but they definitely did set a standard for how a bezel-less screen should look like.
Yeah, because we saw many manufacturers following suit with a notch, which I am still strongly opposed to. I think it's ugly. I think it takes up a lot of space. For me, I feel like it blocks out too much video, but you had some hands-on experience. You've used the iPhone X. For you, is the notch really a big deal, especially at this point in time? We're 2 years into it.
Well, yeah, obviously the notch, it's going to be one of the first things that you see. But after you kind of, I guess, get used to it, it kind of just disappears. Because in terms of the notch, it's not really like it's not like the Pixel 3 notch, as
that was kind of
tons of information on the left and right. All you're getting is just like the date, the time, or like your cellular usage. So it's kind of just like little pop-ups on the sides that don't even really get used to play video that much. Like most video would zoom out and not even take up that space. So it's kind of just a thing where, like, yes, I guess it looks kind of ugly if you're looking at it for the first time and you're imagining how you're going to use it. Once you actually do use it, you realize that it's not really as overblown as it seems to be, especially on like Apple's promotional material.
Yeah. And from your standpoint, earlier this year, Samsung launched the S10, S10e, S10 Plus, S10 5G, and then later the Note 10 and Note 10 Plus, which all have a hole punch design where the camera is cut out of the screen as opposed to having a notch. Where do you stand on that? Do you think Apple should have adopted a similar type of design?
So this is one of the things that I actually really liked about Samsung's new phones. They have the all-screen design, and the only thing they have is that one camera on the, I guess, hole punch. So
Yeah.
I did like how they did it for the S10, how it's just in the corner. They have all like the status, like notifications, stuff like that to the left of
Yeah.
it. And it doesn't really take up much space. You don't really notice it
Yeah.
much. Even if you're zooming in on video, you're just missing like a little tiny dot, which I don't know. I've seen some video where like they scientifically prove that like you kind of ignore that part of the video anyway. Like it just blends in
Yeah.
because you're not focused on it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a better implementation of a bezel-less display than Apple did. But
Yeah.
then again, Apple, like, they have their whole Face ID system, their, like, true depth camera, stuff like that, that I don't think would be possible in a hole punch display.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially because the S10 does have fingerprint recognition, but it has...
Yeah, it has under screen.
Yes, but Apple, they don't have an alternative. They need Face ID, and there's really no way to put that anywhere else without having a notch.
And at this point, it really is true. The Samsung phones are basically the industry standard for what a smartphone should be. Do you think that Apple should have admitted that they were wrong and put a fingerprint reader? And do you see them ever doing that?
I
like under the
honestly,
screen?
I do prefer a fingerprint reader to Face ID just because easier, it's faster, and I think yes, definitely with this technology that we have now, it is possible. I just think we're like a smidge too early for Apple to likely put it in, because of their whole fashionably late to the party. I've heard rumors that next year. I don't really trust rumors this early before like the next cycle.
I don't either, no.
But rumors have said that they're going to be implementing under-screen Touch ID for a future iPhone, like maybe even next year. So I can see them doing it at that point, and at that point I think that they will set the standard for it, especially since their Touch ID version 2 was extremely fast. It was amazing. I still have it on my iPhone 8 right now, and it's lightning fast. I don't even have to think about it. I just press the home button to open the phone, and it works.
Yeah.
So if they can replicate how amazing that was with an under-screen fingerprint reader, I think it will definitely become a lot more preferred to Face ID.
Yeah. Trying to think what else about this phone.
One thing,
blanking, oh my god.
One thing that they really stress a lot more than they really should is that they add like new color options, and they make that like a way bigger feature than it needs to be. Like if we're just gonna talk about it for like a few seconds, I like the new colors in the iPhone 11. I mean,
I like some of them better than others. I do think that is a good place for them to differentiate from their competitors and even themselves at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Because all phones are these, my dad likes to call them these glass chocolate bars. And that is basically what they are. They all look, especially as they go bezel-less, there's less room for sort of differentiation you can make to the design. So if you can offer a unique color, that's, I guess, is a reason for someone to buy this. Like, why would I buy this phone over, a Sony or an LG? But I mean, the specific colors, I'm torn on the mint on the 11, and I am even more sort of, I'm not a huge fan of the army green they chose for the Pro models.
Personally, I do like most of the colors on the 11. Like, I wouldn't personally use them, but I think that they do look aesthetically pleasing. Just looking at them. For the iPhone 11, I'm kind of torn about the armor green. I don't hate it yet, but I'm kind of just like, how's that really going to look in real life? And not just like they're overblown, oversaturated, or
their press
picture perfect promotional material.
So I mean, what about the naming structure with the 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max, which are replacing the 10s and 10s Max, and then the 10R is now just the 11. Um, do you think, number one, is this confusing for consumers? And number two, is the iPhone 11 Pro Max a stupidly long name?
First of all, yeah, iPhone 11 Pro Max. What are they gonna add
It's
next?
too many.
It's too many words, but honestly, I think that this is the best naming system that they've had since before the 10.
Right,
just
yeah,
because
because
it's a
that's when
lot
their product
easier to
their line
understand.
got all fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
It really seemed like when they launched the iPhone 10, they just sort of kind of went crazy and didn't. I don't know. They didn't create a good path forward for the brand. I felt like with their naming scheme, like it was something that was obviously gonna have to be overhauled within the next couple of years. And don't forget the fact that everyone called it the iPhone X and the iPhone XS and the iPhone X Max because it was a Roman numeral, which they finally abandoned. But I guess the biggest thing for consumers is that the iPhone 11 has dropped $50 from where the iPhone 10R was last year. And it's functionally identical. It still has an LCD display, same resolution, I believe. The only difference is you're only getting 2 cameras as opposed to 3, and it's actually $50 cheaper than last year. How surprised were you to see that Apple would actually drop their prices on the newest model?
Yeah, personally, even last year I was like, the XR is way too overpriced. Honestly, this is probably the price that they should have started the XR at in terms of what makes the most sense. And I think it's definitely a welcome drop in price. It was definitely not expected. Like even during the keynote, when I watched it, they announced the price is $699. People were like, "Whoa, what?" Because not because it's reasonable. I still think it a little bit unreasonable, but it's called like the Apple Premium. But I think it's just because they've already established that like their budget end is going to be over $700. But for them to now drop it, really is kind of a nice turn of events. I really hope that they consider that for more future products.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because this is like I think over half of their iPhone sales last year were on the iPhone 10R. They sold significantly less of the 10s and 10s Max. So definitely dropping the price is going to help even more people consider upgrading to a product, even if it is functionally identical to the phone they already have in their hands. Yeah. Do you think that any of these phones are worth upgrading to if you just bought an iPhone 10s or an iPhone 10R?
Absolutely not. I don't even think they're worth upgrading if you have an iPhone 10.
Really?
Honestly, upgrades should probably start if you have maybe an iPhone 8 or before that. iPhone 7, I think, is a good spot to where you should upgrade to a new phone. Just because they haven't really changed anything, no matter how much they have made all the new features overblown, it's essentially the iPhone 10 with upgraded internals, marginally better display. Camera is the main improvements where it's at, but I don't think many people are unhappy with the iPhone 10's quality. Yeah. So it's just marginally better than the iPhone 10 in so many ways that it's really not worth it unless you have a really older phone.
Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it for the iPhone. How about the Apple Watch 5th generation? So basically the body is it not the same essentially
it's
body bezel display
same.
As last year?
Exact same dimensions, exact same, pretty much everything. The only
they even changed the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The only difference that they had was that there was an always-on display. I think there's actually 3 features that they even announced on stage. There weren't even that many more that they tried to overblow. There was 1, which was the new implementation of this always-on display. 2, the implementation of a compass, which got way more applause than it probably should have. Yeah. And 3, they introduced international 911 calling across 150 countries, I believe. And those were the 3 main features that kind of got introduced. They're all kind of
stuff that if you had never used an Apple Watch, you kind of would have expected it to already have. If you're a normie who's never used a smartwatch, one would assume it already had those features. So it seems like they're still kind of playing catch up in terms of software.
Yeah, so I don't really think that this upgrade warranted a new generation name. You can even see that with how they structured their kind of Apple Watch line now. They got rid of the Series 4. They do not sell it anymore. They only sell the Series 3 and the Series 5, which is kind of a trend that's been happening even in terms of iPhones that really just shows how little is improving year by year.
Right. Yeah, we're definitely reaching a point of stagnation with technology as Moore's law slowly becomes less and less of a thing, just because we're kind of reaching the physical limits of technology, processor sizes, everything. Um, so I guess finally that leaves us then. Well, I guess I do want to talk about the Apple Watch for one more second. For me, I don't understand how it's taken them so long just to add an always-on display. Like,
yeah, me either.
my phone, my Samsung Galaxy S8, this thing came out before the iPhone 10, has an always-on display. I turned it off because I turned on battery mode because battery life sucks on Android phones. So the battery saver mode turns off the always-on display. But if I want it on, I can have it. That was never even an option before on the Apple Watch, and it's supposed to be a watch. Its primary purpose is to tell you the time as quickly and easily as possible. So, like, you're replacing a mechanical watch or just a traditional watch that just tells you the time with something that you actually have to, turn on, boot up just to see what time it is. I thought that was kind of ridiculous.
It definitely was something that probably should have been implemented long, long before. So,
because it's always had an OLED screen, so battery.
I'm glad to see that they added it with this one, but then again, kind of
like
late to the party. Even I don't think this one was fashionably late. This one was just late.
Yeah, because always on display is such a boring thing. There's no real better way they could have done it. And just the fact that the Apple Watch just always had an OLED display since its debut, so it's always had that better power consumption that you have with an OLED, where it doesn't have to power an entire backlight.
Yeah.
Even when the screen is black and there's just white text, it only has to power those letters and numbers. So they've always had the physical hardware to do it. They just never thought of it, which is kind of ridiculous. And it's not something that's processor intensive either.
This is probably a feature that they've been holding out so that they can, as they say, perfect it, but I don't think so. You could definitely implement an always-on display, even within a new software update. Maybe not as complex as they have it with, like, the watch face kind of structure staying the same, but in terms of just, like, show the time. Like, in an always-on fashion, like, that would...
Well, it seems like just a desperate attempt to push a product onto people that they don't really need. Sort of, I guess, like, honestly, the Apple AirPods, the original version, they were entirely finished with design development, everything. The product was ready to be launched the summer before the iPhone 7 came out, but they waited to drop it until they launched that phone with no headphone jack, and it just sort of feels in a way similar to that.
Yeah, it's definitely what you said. The point of technology stagnation is approaching fast. Even in terms of new innovations, they're having to resort to completely different form factors, i.e. the Galaxy Fold, foldable phones, and like pop-up cameras, stuff like that. They're having to resort to stuff like that to innovate more. So at this point, I think Apple has gone as far as it can go. Like, they're not a company that likes to experiment or try out new things. They like to only do things that have been tried and true.
Yeah.
So
this isn't the company of 2007's iPhone or the iPod. This isn't Steve Jobs' Apple anymore. This is Tim Cook's Apple, and they're perfectly fine with being a lifestyle brand that introduces product that millions of people will buy, regardless of whether it's innovative or not. They just buy it because of the logo, because Apple is, at this point, the Louis Vuitton, the Cartier, the Coach of technology.
I don't think that Apple hardware excels at all anymore. I think their main focus now, and I think they have realized this, and their main focus right now is software. Software is the only place that really gets people to buy an iPhone if they know anything about tech. Just because Android sucks. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on who you are, but for anyone who's been using an iPhone for the longest time, no one is switching between iOS and Android. The people who use those platforms are fully ingrained and many times bitterly hate the other side. Android users are never going to switch to an iPhone and vice versa. So, like, it's definitely, like, the best you can do is just try desperately to get people to upgrade their phones. Yeah. But you kind of need to present a compelling reason, which neither the Apple Watch nor the iPhone 11 does.
Yeah.
So technology is kind of getting boring until they crack it, which I'm sure they will, putting the cameras under the screen. We're not going to see much innovation. And after that, the smartphone has reached its final form, and I think we're not going to see any changes.
Yeah, it's all screen.
Ever until
everything works.
Until the phone itself becomes obsolete. So,
all right.
I guess that's a little bit of a depressing ending to our Apple report there.
Yeah.
But thank you, Parth, for joining us on the 24/7 News Show to
Yeah.
analyze in depth this phone.